What's up, guys, and welcome back to the doctor's office. I am Dr. K. Roy Knight, here to give you a proper diagnosis and prognosis and everything comics and comic book characters. The new book for Witchblade is wild. I'm telling you. And Ian is just so fine. So, as we know, they found Mr. Pisano, who they've been looking for because Mr. Pisano has information about Sara Pizzini's father, because that was his partner when he was a police officer. And they get him into the apartment, and they're trying to get information out of him, and he's talking about her father and like what kind of person he was and the situations that they were going through and how it is, or how it came to be that her father ended up getting killed by crooked cops. And he actually ends up pulling out a key that's very important. Now, the key is a sickle key, and Mr. Pisano having it in his possession is kind of weird in and of itself. He didn't even actually know what it was, and he was like, I'm gonna give it to you, but if I give it to you, are we cool? Are we square? And she's like, no, not really, but stay right there, chill on the couch. There's nowhere for you to go right now. Meanwhile, Ian and Michael are in the kitchen, and they're basically like confronting each other, if that's what you want to call it. Michael is actually the one doing the confronting, and Ian's just like, let me guess, you're going to hurt me if I hurt her or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm not going to attack somebody who wears Burberry. He might be important. He is important, just not for the reasons that you're thinking. And he keeps calling him like Sarah's boyfriend. When Sara comes in, he's like, your boyfriend. She's like, he's not my boyfriend, but she needs to talk to Ian. And Ian thinks that it's best if Michael is not there. And while Sara doesn't necessarily agree with that, she does kind of just give in to that idea, mainly because she doesn't want Michael to get hurt, because this situation that they're in right now is going to get Michael hurt or killed. And he's like, I'm trying to help you with the situation with your dad. And she's like, I understand that, but you gotta go. Of course, he's just like, fuck you, Sara. Now, her attention then turns to Ian, because she wants to know who it is that he works for. She was like, who is your master? And he's like, I am not a fucking dog. This is the second time somebody has insinuated that for you. And essentially this conversation between the two of them gets fairly intense, because she's like, who is it that you work for? What is your mission? Because you know mine, but I don't really know yours. And he's like, I kind of told you what my mission is, but I guess it wasn't it wasn't detailed enough for you. And he's like, I'm kind of insulted. I've never been so insulted. And she was like, fucking prove it. What is your mission? So he goes on to say that his entire mission is to help the Witch Queen, which is the person who is in possession of the Witchblade. And he wants his name to be right there with hers. He wants to be her knight in shining armor. He wants his name to be feared, and he wants to join her in her fight against the darkness. All of this sounding very well and good. And it is his explanation. So he's going through this explanation of what it is that he wants and desires, and how it is that he came to be near her. All the while, Mr. Pisano, who is in there sleeping on the couch, is throwing up black stuff from his eyes and from his mouth, and it actually looks really fucking gross. Now, while they are talking, they do get out the sickle key, and the sickle key is blood coated or blood locked, which means only the blood of the person who it originally belonged to would be able to use it. So she's about to find out whether or not she is her father's daughter. So she uses the key and unlocks a hidden study, and this is where her father was performing all of this work. And she's looking at all of his stuff. Ian is in there, and just as fucking shocked and surprised as she is, and she's going over the information that's in there, and she's like, my father was not killed just over some dirty cop bullshit. Like, that can't be, especially with all this in here. She's like, there are 2 cops involved in this, but then there's also a third person whom I don't know, the third person who got away, because I assume the 2 cops have been killed already. But there was a third person who got away, and that person's name is Kenneth Irons. Something that I believe Ian already fucking knows. Now, all the while, the Witchblade is itching because creosote larvae are inside of not only Mr. Pisano, but they have infested the entire building. And so the Witchblade covers her, ready to fight, and Ian is also ready to fight. And she basically tells Ian to get everybody out of the building. She's like, I don't give a fuck how you do it. Snatch them out of bed if you have to, but get them the hell out of here. And she goes back and starts recounting events since the very beginning of this. When she went up against the sex traffickers, Venter and all of them, and then she ended up in the hospital with all of the women that she had saved. And she basically realizes that Venter is a creosote, and that the creosotes are the traffickers. They operate, or they try to get bodies or corpses so that they can reanimate those corpses and use them. And they had this key because Pisano is dead. After they killed him, they had this key, but they weren't able to use it because it's bloodlocked. So they needed Sara in order to do it. So Venter basically set this whole situation up. He set up everything over at the warehouse when she first gets the Witchblade, where he asks if she was part of the special operations, if she's part of SOG, which I think is Special Operations Group or whatever the fuck. So of course she was Special Ops, and she didn't know how he knew that. And now that she's thinking back on it, of course they knew that, because they were doing their research on her in particular. Even if she didn't have the Witchblade, they didn't need her to have the Witchblade. They just needed her because they had her father's key, which means they probably also participated in her father's murder. And essentially they're trying to get into his study, but she's able to pull that sickle key out of there, lock that study up completely so they can't get into it. And she's doing battle with them, going through, and her armor, and of course the more powerful the more powerful being she's fighting, the more armor she gets. So now the armor is covering her face. The fucking design is sick. Love it. She goes in and she saves a kid and a few others. Venter wants the larvae to infect her, but she's preventing that from happening. So after she saves them, she runs into Ian again, and she's like, I want to meet Kenneth Irons, and you are going to take me to Kenneth Irons. Literally right the fuck now. And that's where we get that. The artwork for this, fabulous. It has still yet to fall into that bit of lazy writing. I am thoroughly enjoying this reboot because Witchblade is not only one of my favorite comic books, but one of my favorite animes. And for this, the anime didn't use Sara, and I kind of wish that it did. But for this comic book, I'm enjoying the relationship between her and Ian. And again, Ian was sent to her by Kenneth Irons, and Kenneth Irons is trying to build some type of armada, which means he's trying to build an armada, but it looks like Ian has a different thing going on, because he wants to join her in her fight against the darkness, but the darkness is not there. Kenneth Irons is trying to fight against the darkness, just in a different way, in the worst way. So it seems like two different things, or two different ways and paths going to accomplish the same exact thing. But I think in Kenneth Irons' thing, he's going to be ruling some type of empire or whatever. I'm not gonna lie, I do not think it is a good idea for her to go see Kenneth Irons yet. I think Kenneth Irons has some kind of shit up his sleeve, and I just think it is a bad idea. And I think it's also going to reveal a relationship between Kenneth Irons and Ian that she is just 100% not ready for. And I know that she wants to figure out what happened to her dad. I get that. But I just feel like it's a little bit too early, especially when you and the Witchblade have not been simpatico. You are resisting it, and Ian keeps telling you that. So if you're like thinking about going up against Kenneth Irons, I feel like Kenneth Irons has things and weapons and all kinds of things at his disposal that would like kick your ass at this point in time, because you and the Witchblade are not like synthesizing. You're just not. Like he could just quite possibly be like, hey Ian, handle her. And Ian knows like your weaknesses because he knows that you're resisting the Witchblade, and it's just like you're not ready for what you think you're ready for. And I just think it's so bad for her to do this right now. It is so bad. And I think it's just going to end badly for her unless he decides to come up with like a deal or some shit, which is still gonna end badly for her. The writing here is fabulous. I'm so glad that they haven't slipped with the writing, and like just everything that they are currently doing with the story is so much fun, and this is like the reboot that it definitely needed. So I'm very much enjoying it. I feel like he's going to bring in somebody. If they have another Tomb Raider crossover, I'm going to like have a fucking heart attack. I think that would be so fun, but that's just me wishful thinking. So that is it for this episode of The Doctor's Office, and I will see you guys at your next checkup. And if you have not gotten my book, please do.